Greetings from the kitchen, folks. Today I'm going to have a go at making a Black Forest Gateau chocolate stout. So here are my key ingredients in today's brew. So I'm using a Wilko Artisan Brewing Chocmeister Premium Stout kit. I've never used a beer kit in my life. This is my first time ever using one, but I'm pimping the beer kit. So this should make 40 pints at 4%. I'm going to be making less than 40 pints, hopefully at over 5%. I've got the yeast which comes with this kit, which is the just 69 yeast premium. I've no idea what sort of yeast it is, but I'm going to stick with it anyway. I've got a kilogram of brewing sugar, dextrose monohydrate. I've got 500 grams of medium spray malt from Wilko's. Now I was looking for the dark spray malt, but it was out of stock, so I'm just going to use this one instead and hope for the best. And along with my chocolate, which is in here, to get my Black Forest flavour in, I'm using Simply Syrup's Black Forest flavour syrup. And I've used this before, not this particular flavour, but this brand, and they've worked really well. And then I'm going to add about 20 litres of spring water. My fermentation vessel of choice today is Big Bertha, the Kegland Flat Bottom Firmzilla. This goes above 30 litres altogether. I'm probably aiming to fill it to about somewhere around about this level or thereabouts. In case you're wondering why it's a bit cloudy, I've just sanitised it and I'm just letting the steam evaporate. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a fairly straightforward brew. Like I say, I've never used a kit before, so I'm going to be learning by doing, learning by brewing, just like always. Let's crack on. I'm going to begin by emptying 5 litres of spring water into this big pan. So then the heat goes on, and I want this water to warm through. While the water's warming up, I'm going to add the kilogram of brewing sugar to it. You'll see it goes milky white. That will clear very quickly. Similarly, I'm going to add the spray malt into the mix. Give all that a stir and a mix around. It does clump, but it will dissolve eventually. So I'm just giving this a stir around. The spray malt has all but dissolved. There's little bits of it floating around, but it's just about there. Right, let's have a look inside that beer kit. Okay, that's what's inside the tin. Looks like the bottom of the North Sea. Right, let the beer kit meet the pan. Oh, look at that. That is some serious tar. It's like black treacle. So I'm feeling an urge to get this stirred again because I don't want that to stick to the bottom of the pan. And yeah, you can see the strings of it. I'm going to need to leave this to cool down for quite a long time before I can pour it into the fermenter, as it's made of plastic. This is some serious goo. Okay, I've turned the heat off now, and I just want this to continue to melt and mix together. So I'm now just going to put this on top and leave it for an hour or so to cool down. Okay, this is what's left in the tin. I just can't scrape it all out, but what I've done is I've boiled a kettle of water, and I'm going to pour that into the tin, and hopefully that will melt what's in the tin. I obviously can't pick the tin up now for a bit because it's going to be boiling hot. So the current situation is as follows. I've got this waiting to cool on the hob there. I've got this tin waiting to cool just here. I've got lots of water and the syrup just there, and my fermenter just here. So I'm going to add some bits and pieces that are safe to put into the fermenter. So I'm going to get the spring water in there. And this is the key bulk ingredient really. So there's lots of this to go in. I'll come back to it when I've done it. So I've got the bulk of my water in. Now here's the Black Forest syrup. So let's have a little investigation of this. Oh wow, that really smells incredible. The cherry, the chocolate, everything from a Black Forest Gateau is in there. So wonderful. Let's get this in. Smells great, really smells fantastic. I've got high hopes for this, and I ain't even got the beer kit in there yet. In fact, this would make a good hard seltzer, definitely. So here's the current situation. There's not much more I can do now until that and that has cooled down. So I'm going to put this on top of here to keep any contaminants out, and I'm going to have a cuppa. I'll catch you in an hour or two. Okay, an hour and a half has passed. This is still warm, but it's by no means hot. So I'm now going to pour this into the fermenter. And this is all of the stuff that was left around the tin, which I've melted a bit with hot water, so I'm not losing it. So here's the fermenter currently. It's just under 18 litres, as you can see there. Right, next I need to get my liquid from the pan into here. This is now at a fine temperature. It's warm, but it's by no means hot, so it's safe enough to go in there. I'm going to use this glass tankard to transfer it from there into there, just to begin with, because it's too full to tip it without making a big mess. And this is going to make a bit of a mess, but I'll have to wash my fermenter afterwards. Unavoidable mess, unfortunately. Part of brewing. Never trust a brewer that doesn't make a mess. I've just made that up. Sounds good though, doesn't it? Right, I've got enough out of the pan now to be able to tip it. So here goes. And in it goes. Yeah. Lovely stuff. And that's as full as I want this fermenter to be. Okay, I'm just going to rinse the outside of the fermenter. Get all the stuff off it. So I'm currently at a total of 25 litres. I don't want to put any more liquid into this now. So looking at this now, if I look at the scale here, which is a thermometer, you can see that the temperature of this is currently 24.75, which is slightly too high for me to take the original gravity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit out, put it in the hydrometer tube, and then pop that in the fridge to cool down a bit. So here's the hydrometer tube. What goes in here isn't going to go back inside the fermenter. I shall just tip that. So there's no chance of it contaminating. I'm only sacrificing 100 ml, that's okay. So I'm going to pop this in the fridge now until it gets down to 20, then I can take the original gravity. While I'm waiting for that to cool down, I'm now going to add the yeast onto this, and I'm just going to sprinkle it on top. It's the yeast that came with it, and the instructions say to simply sprinkle on top. Don't worry about mixing it in, just sprinkle it on top. That's what I'm going to do. Next I'm going to put the fermenter together. So this goes on top here, and then this screws down above it. You've got to make sure you're not cross-threaded. And then there's a hole in the top just here, which is where the airlock will go. So the yeast that's in there, it's going to have a wonderful time. It's warm, there's a lot of sugar and a lot of nutrient. I don't think fermentation will take very long to begin at all. So we'll have a little update shortly. So I'm now in the utility room and I've got my fermenter in place over here. So I've added the airlock in the top of the fermenter, which I've had to seal with a bit of blue tack or white tack because it's not quite airtight, but this works pretty effectively. Temperature wise, it is on 22.72 at the minute. And I've got this now stood on a heat mat. This is a new toy. This is an Electrum heating tray, the TE25 for 25 litre containers. It's basically a plastic heat tray, which is okay for this size vessel, but I didn't want it contacting the heat tray exactly, so I've just put a tea towel folded in between. But this is a cold room, as you can see. It's just a bit of glass to the window outside, and it's pretty rotten weather, January, etc. So I just figured that this would keep the temperature reasonable for it to continue to ferment in this room. So what's in the hydrometer tube is now at the right temperature for me to take the original gravity. And I'm starting off on a very healthy original gravity of 1.062, 1062. So there's my fermenter labelled up with a chalk pen. I'm just waiting for fermentation to begin now. I'll get back to you and give you an update when that happens. See you then, folks. So just a 1 hour update. The top of the brew now has clearly got the beginnings of a Krausen form, and you can see there's a clear ring around it, and the top has got a very thin layer. No active fermentation in the bubbler just yet, but I don't think it'll be too long. There's obviously quite a bit of airspace here which the CO2 will need to displace. Hey folks, 24-hour update from the utility room. Let's have a look at that fermentation. So here it is, and as you can see, the Krausen is looking wonderful. Fermentation is going nice and strong and steady. Now, this hasn't been without a little bit of tinkering, because the temperature of this was at 24.75 all the time. And I read up and asked advice on Facebook, but that was probably too warm for a stout. So I've now got it at 22.72. Now the heat mat is only a 25 heat mat. So what I've had to do is as follows. Let's just nip outside for a second. I've plugged the heat mat into a timer plug, which is on for 15 minutes and then off for 30 minutes, on for 15 minutes, off for 30 minutes. And that seems to be keeping the temperature just right. So here it is. It seems to be going very well. Anyway folks, this has been a learning curve as usual, particularly with the heat mat. I think long term I need to get an Inkbird, but for now this will do. I will catch you when fermentation is over at bottling. See you then folks. Good evening from the utility room, folks. A Black Forest Gateau chocolate stout update. Right, it's been in the fermenter for 1 month. It's gone through the end of December and most of January. Temperatures in this room have not been ideal for a porter, but with the help of the heat mat, which is under here, or the heat pad, it's not done too bad, to be quite honest. I've watched the bubbles be steady, and they've declined and declined and declined, and now I'm really not seeing any bubbles at all, hardly, come through it. So today I want to rack it out of here and into some demijohns. So here's the stout. You can see where the Krausen came to. It rose quite high at the sides there, but it never went any higher than about here. So I'm quite fortunate with that. I'm currently just below the 25 litre mark, so I've got myself 5 demijohns down here, 4 1-gallon demijohns and 1 5 litre plastic water bottle. I've got my bungs all ready and my extra long siphoning tube, as you can see just there. And I've also got my hat on because it's blooming cold in here. Bonus points if you can tell me what team it is on there. So I've got my siphoning tube ready, it's been sanitised. I'm just going to undo one of these plastic knobs on top of the fermenter. I'm not going to take the whole lid off. And I'm going to attempt to somehow get my tube to clip at a decent depth within there. This is really anybody's guess because you can't see anything through that black murk. But we'll see how we get on. Okay, I don't know where that is in there. There's a minute layer of sediment in the bottom, and I'm talking about that much. So that's pretty efficient. The kits are definitely better than grain when it comes to loss through the area that's sedimenty. Right, let's see if I can give this a good strong suck. And there we go. So that's going in. So that's coming through at a nice and steady rate. Hopefully there's not going to be too much problem in the way of oxygenation. If it happens, it happens. I'm hoping it won't, but there's always a risk when you're transferring from one vessel to another. Anyway, this is going to take a little while, so I'll come back to you with an update shortly. Okay, so just an update. I'm on my third vessel now. You can see it has a nice head, at least on those two. This one less so. Now, is that the effect of going into plastic rather than onto glass? I'm not quite sure actually. But as I'm filling them satisfactorily, I'm putting an airlock in the top. This one I want to top up a little bit more yet. It smells fantastic. It smells just like a beer, which is great. You always want your beer to smell like beer. Right, I'm going to start taking these to the kitchen and washing them off. I'm on the last one now. I don't know if there's going to be enough to fill this demijohn, but let's see. And there we go, bubbles in the siphoning tube. Pretty much tell me that that's as much as I'm going to get. So I'm not happy with how much airspace there is in this one, so I'm probably going to bottle this one tomorrow morning. In all fairness though, that's not a bad job. Quite efficient. Okay, that's it for now folks. Tomorrow I'll label the demijohns up and I'll have a look at this one here, which is not particularly full. I'm going to have to bottle this one as is, but these are going to stay in the demijohns for at least 3 days and possibly 7 days. I just want to be confident that fermentation is definitely over. So I'll catch you tomorrow. Hey folks, just a quick update from the utility room. This is the day after. So the half demijohn that I had, I've bottled today. So I managed to get 3 750ml and a 500 out of what was there. I bottled it prematurely. I don't think it will work out as well as what's left, but at least I've got 4 now in demijohns, and I should expect to get about 24 750ml bottles from what is down there. So I've labelled this up and I'm simply leaving this now for a whole week. The radiator's not on behind it, and I'm just leaving it for a week just to make sure that there's no more activity in the airlock and that it's over and done with. So the next film that you see from me will be in about a week's time, and that will be bottling. See you then. Good afternoon from the kitchen folks. It's my least favourite part of the brewing process. It's bottling day, and here they are, sanitised, stacked, drying and ready. I've got a few more at the back there in reserve in case I don't have enough here on the initial stack. So let's have a look at the Black Forest Gateau Chocolate Stout. It's been in secondary for 1 week. There's been no airlock activity whatsoever, and there is no further build-up of sediment in the bottom. I'm quite happy at this stage to bottle this. So I've actually got 4 demijohns to bottle. What I'll do in this film is just demonstrate the bottling process from one of them, because you don't need to see it all. It really isn't that exciting. I've got my bottles in the sink, and there's my hydrometer tube as well. Now in each of the bottles I need to put sugar for priming. So in the larger bottles, the 750ml, I'm going to put 1 2/3 of a teaspoon of sugar. And then in the smaller bottles, I'm just going to put 1 teaspoon of sugar. Now the priming sugar is what helps this to ferment. The yeast which is left in suspension in there will eat the sugar in the bottle. It will create a fractional fermentation, but that will cause CO2 to build up, which will cause pressure, which will give it a sparkle. Fingers crossed anyway. So I've now got my priming sugar in the bottles, so it's bung out. Siphoning tube in. I've got the tube held in place with this handy clip. You can't see, but it's in the very bottom of the demijohn. I can't see any sediment, so I'm not bothered. Let's do it. So the first bit that comes out is going into my hydrometer tube so I can take the final gravity before going into the bottles. And isn't that a lovely chocolate colour? And there we go, bubbles in the tube. So this one is now done. So these are the bottles that I've managed to fill from one demijohn. I've got a mixture of bottles that require bungs and cages and ones that need crown capping. So I'll just go through that with you now. So here's an example of a bottle that requires a bung. These are plastic bungs. Just buy them online and keep reusing them, reusing them, reusing them. It's been sanitised and I've had it in very hot water, which makes it more malleable. Push that over the bottle and into the bottle, like so. Now, when fermentation takes place inside there, you know, the tiny fractional fermentation, which will give it the sparkle, that causes pressure. That will become a missile unless I put a cage in place. So my cages are all recycled from other bottles. I get them from my wife's Prosecco, Cava, whatever she has. Get them from the next door neighbour's champagne. Get them from the local micro pub. I get them from everywhere really. So really handy. And there you go. Each of these cages is normally good for about 3 or 4 uses before it goes brittle and snaps. Now I've got a couple more of these to do. You've seen me do it once, so I don't need to demonstrate that to you again. So here is an example of a bottle that needs a crown cap. So here's a crown cap. Buy these online, use them once, unfortunately. But this is a job which is sometimes easy and sometimes tricky. I do it downwards into the sink because there's less chance of the bottle knocking over. And I'm also using a silicone non-slip mat so the bottom of the bottle doesn't slip. This is the crown capper. A bit like Pac-Man or Space Invaders, however you want to visualise it. Sometimes it's all right to use, sometimes it's a right pain. So the cap goes in here, which is magnetic, like so. And you lower it onto the bottle and pull the levers down. Nice and steady. Some bottles are better than others, and this is a good one, I can tell. So this has made a nice, clean cap. Yeah, very good. So you can see how nice and clean that is. I've got a few more to do. I'll come back to you when it's done. So that's the first demijohn, bottled, bunged and capped. I've got 3 more to do and the process is the same. I'm going to do that and then I'll come back to you when it's all over. So bottling is virtually done. I just now need to take the final gravity. Then I can work out the alcohol by volume. And that has sank very nicely. And I'm on a final gravity of 1.012, 1012. Okay, I need to work out the final alcohol by volume. So I take the original gravity, which was 1.062. I deduct from that the final gravity, which is 1.012. And that equals 0.05. I then multiply this figure by 131.25 and that gives me a final alcohol by volume of 6.56%. Let's just say 6.6% because with the extra little bit of fermentation that will take place in the bottle, that will definitely bump up. So I'm happy with that. So I've now got an awful lot of sticky bottles which I need to rinse off and let them dry them off before I can label them, so that's what I've got to do next. So I've ended up with 31 bottles, all of which are drying off nicely now. I need to make up the labels for them. So I'm just using Microsoft Word to make a very simple template which I'll print out. Right, it's time to label my bottles. So I like my bottles to look nice. Take a little bit of pride in them. So I give them all a very simple yet effective label. And there they all are. Bottling day. Completed it, mate. Welcome to my conditioning room, folks. Here's my stouts. So here they are on these shelves, and this is where they're going to condition now for the next month. So the conditioning process is what will eventually lead it to have a bit of fizz and a bit of life in it when the yeast, which is in suspension, eats the sugars which I put in the bottles, the priming sugars. So these are temperature controlled shelves. So when the temperature reaches 19.5 on this thermometer down there, a little silver thing there, it turns the plug on and that turns the heater on behind. When it gets to 20.5, it turns off. I need to rotate these bottles periodically because the front of the shelf is not as warm as the back of the shelf. But this works quite effectively, and this is where my beers will be now for the next month. So I'll catch you in a month's time when it comes to opening and tasting. Welcome to Slaley Hall. Today I'm going to open my Black Forest Gateau Chocolate Stout. So it's been in the bottle for 1 month. I'm really excited about this one. I'm wanting a sparkle or at least a bit of life in it, which I think I'm going to get because the bung looks like it's very slightly raised, maybe by 0.5 millimetre. We'll see. I'd like it to pour with a head, have some body, but above all, I want it to have a great taste. Am I going to get those things? Who knows? Let's find out. So I'm just going to remove the cage, and the cage is snapped because it's an old one. That's what happens. That one's for the bin now. Right, am I going to get a pop? Modest pop, but we've definitely got vapour. There's vapour, that's a good sign. Oh, it's... Oh, alright, okay. It's pouring like an ale. Like a proper stout, actually. Look at that. That actually looks beautiful. I don't look bad at all. Oh, it smells gorgeous. That is Black Forest loveliness. That's incredible. I cannot believe that that syrup has imparted so much flavour into the stout. It's like pudding. Absolutely beautiful. A success story. A massive success story. It's sweet, it's chocolatey, it looks good, it smells good. It's a great drink. I'm really, really happy with it. I'm definitely going to be making this one again in future. Cheers, folks. It's been a pleasure, as always. And I'd just like to give a special shout out to my erstwhile cameraman, Aidan, who's doing a great job right now. Cheers, folks. Catch you on the next brew. The film that you've just watched is a Moss Home and Garden production. You can find more by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. I'd just like to say thank you very much for supporting my YouTube channel and for watching my films. It really is very much appreciated. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel in order to receive future updates about the home and garden films which I upload. You can find my YouTube channel by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. Please click on the red subscribe button. When you've done that, a little bell will appear. If you press that also, then you'll get future updates about the films which I upload. If you like my films, if you like my style of filming, then you might also like my travel channel, which you will find by going to youtube.com/Stuart Moss or type in www.mosstravel.tv. Again, if you could subscribe to that channel, it would be hugely appreciated. If you'd like to get Moss Home and Garden updates on Facebook, then please open Facebook and do a search for Moss Home and Garden, and you will find the page. If you like the page, then you will get future updates on there. And if you'd like to connect on Instagram for home, garden and travel photography, as well as some stories, then my username is StuMoss, STUMOSS. If you'd like to connect on Twitter, then my username is @StuartMoss. And if you'd like to contact me about film usage or any other issue, please just email me on stewmosshomegarden@gmail.com. Once again, thank you very much for supporting my channel, for watching my films. I do appreciate it. I'd just like you all to have a great day.